Hi, everybody. Let's go ahead and continue talking about argument, and let's talk in particular about logical fallacies. Now, I know that we've talked a little bit about this before, but I want to really touch on that again because this is going to be a really important piece as you write your paper, both in your paper itself and looking at the sources that you find to use in that paper. Logical fallacies are inaccurate or intentionally misleading misapplication of logic. In other words, what are you doing? You're tricking people into your view. You're playing tricks with them. You're playing on their emotions. Maybe you're twisting the facts, or you're presenting it in just a certain way, or using a certain kind of argument trick, if you will, to kind of get people to buy into it a little bit more, or to change the way that they're thinking, or to see things a little bit differently. The problem with this is that when you engage in a logical fallacy, yes, it really reflects badly on you because it's like you're not doing the right thing. You're not taking things seriously. You're not doing it the right way, so to speak. So that makes you look bad. But it also breaks that trust. Okay, so when your audience looks at you and they see like, hey, wait a minute, what are you doing to me? You're really tricking me, or you're really doing something to me, or what is this that you're really up to, right? You've broken that trust with your audience. And this is especially important because you're asking your audience to buy into your belief or into your plan or your idea, whatever it might be. And so if they don't feel they can trust you individually, then they really have a hard time trusting your idea. So, it's really kind of important to be aware of your fallacies, or when you see these in your sources. Now, I'm not going to say that every source is free of these because, some of them are a little more subtle than others. Some of them are unintentionally appear. But you do need to be aware of it. And then you have to judge whether or not that this is still a valid or usable source. So this is a list of fallacies that comes out of our book. This is not an all-inclusive list by any means. And there are some of these in here that you will see with different names, like maybe a book or a teacher will present it in a way, and you're like, God, that kind of sounds familiar, but the name doesn't look the same. And when you kind of look into it a little bit more, you'll see that, oh yeah, it's the same thing as something else. It's just called something different. The first fallacy that I have here is the false dichotomy. And this is the misuse of the either or logic. Take it or leave it. If you're not part of the problem, you're part of the solution. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And the problem with this is that you present the argument to your audience and that these are your only two choices. This is all you can have. This is all you can use. These are the only choices you get. And obviously one's really bad and one's really good, your position, right? And so you leave your audience without a lot of options. Let's take a look at another fallacy, and that's the ad hominem attack, or attacking the person instead of the issue. This is probably one of the most common ones that we will see in two ways. Obviously, it is always easier to attack the person, discredit the person, therefore you discredit their ideas. That is a very common tactic. But it is also very common in that you are going to see people do this to you. And we've talked about this before, where people will judge your ideas based on your writing. Like if you have grammar mistakes, or if you have bad kind of constructions, or if your ideas don't flow together logically, if they're not well supported, that will just transfer over to your ideas. Bad writing equals bad ideas. And so, this is one that you will see repetitively. You will see over and over again. So ad hominem, attacking the person instead of the issue, we direct our comments at the producer of the information, not the information itself. You would say that you are a crazy liberal tree hugger. So those ideas, those terms are very emotionally engaging, and they get you very sensitive into they get you very sensitive, they get you very wound up, and it runs you into a different kind of direction and away from the information. Another example that we get, Bill Clinton is a bad president because he was an unfaithful husband. Yeah, I think that there is some overlap between those two. There probably is. But realistically speaking, the two are separate, right? For the most part, they're separate. And I think that the reason that that is effective is that because a lot of people would be very emotionally angry about being an unfaithful husband. That would get people very upset, very engaged, right? And distracted from the larger picture, and that is looking at his ability to lead. Let's look at the non sequitur, and we've talked about this one before. A faulty cause and effect relationship in which you have two occurrences that you're trying to link, that you're trying to put together. This car has a noisy engine, therefore it must be fast. Well, maybe not, right? Think about these old beat up cars. They sound horrible, right? And they don't move very fast. Because I drink a 6-pack of beer a day, sexy young chicks will come flocking to me. I mean, that's every beer commercial out there, right? And just because we see those things together on commercials doesn't mean that they will actually happen together in real life. Let's take a look at another common fallacy that we probably see in our own lives, either us or people that we know, and it's the hasty generalization, or it's people that jump to a conclusion, right? Most of the people in this room are opposed to the project, so most of the people in town are opposed to it as well. Well, is that really statistically probable? Is it really correct to assume that those things are connected in that way? Just because you have a sample size that isn't necessarily statistically appropriate or okay, or it doesn't necessarily reach a broad enough scope of the issue, people just make an assumption, right? But if you think about that, who goes out to these meetings but people that are opposed to things, or people that are upset, right? The people that aren't opposed to it, they're just sitting at home. They don't care, right? Because they're the ones that are going to benefit from it. And so, you think about, what does that really say? And do the statistics or does the evidence really back up that claim? Another one, and this is kind of a difficult one to kind of wrap your mind around a little bit, circular reasoning, or begging the question. This is where you use the term as part of the definition. The standard written English that you will learn in this course is defined as the writing style most oftenly employed by college-educated people. But of course, because your teacher, your instructor, your professor is college-educated, you're being college educated, the things that you're doing are college educated. And so, you're using part of that example as your definition. So you're just kind of working around in circle. You're self-referential, you're self-referencing your information. The red herring is one that I think that you're going to see most politicians use. This is so common. Sports does this a lot. Politicians, they always answer the question, but they don't answer the question that's being asked. So the red herring is where you cloud the main issue with a distraction. You throw something out there and people just kind of follow it that way, but they don't really see that you didn't really address the issue at hand. For instance, if I hadn't done it, somebody else would, so it's really not my fault. Well, no, that it is your fault. You did it, right? Or I work 60 hours a week to support my family and I pay my taxes. You can't arrest me because I punched him in the face. What does working 60 hours or paying your taxes have to do with this assault that took place, right? And so what happens then is you hear a lot of politicians, they start off like they'll say, hey, what would you do for the middle class people in this whatever situation? And they'll talk about their family roots and their family that came from the middle class, but they never really answer the question about what they would do. And so that's the red herring. And again, you will see that a lot of times in politics and in sports. I want to look at two more fallacies. The first one is the slippery slope, and we've talked about this before, where you create a scenario in which once something occurs, that will inevitably lead to another, to another, to another, to another, and that this creates this cascading of events, right? And all these things lead to this end that is absolutely horrible, that no one wants, right? And the thing about slippery slopes, again, we talked about this before, that each individual step isn't so bad. It's the beginning to the absolute end. And so what happens then is you create this situation in which that once the process starts, you just can't get away from it, right? So if you think about slippery slope, the example here, first medicinal wine from a teaspoon, then beer from a bottle, soon you'll be an alcoholic. That's a big stretch, right? That assumes a lot of things happen along the way that don't stop this from happening. And then finally is the post hoc ergo propter hoc, or confusing chronology with causality. The flood happened after the comet appeared, therefore the comet caused the flood. You do see this a lot with societies that are trying to grapple with things that they don't get. But also in research, you'll see they're trying to draw kind of like that faulty cause and effect relationship, that these two things aren't necessarily connected. It's very similar to that. There is a connection, but we're looking at it in reverse, that this happened before that happened, right? Or maybe just because things happen close together in time or space that we try to connect them.